Dígríomh go léir a cóide agus tá fáilte ród. Welcome to Be My Guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lir Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary. And my lovely guest today, looking fabulous there, and I love the colour scheme in the background, is Mary McCarthy, all the way from Cork. And Mary is an Irish dancing teacher and an adjudicator, all the way from is it the Banner? No, the Banner County is Clare.
The Rebel County.
The Rebel County. Pat Barry is out there in the next room, and he'll kill me for not calling it the Rebel County because
or you can call it the real capital if you like.
The real capital. That's what he calls it, the real capital. But how are you, Mary?
I'm very good. I'm very good, Mary. It's hard times for everybody, but we're doing good, thank God, and all around us are good. So I'm fine. I'm very good.
So tell me about, Mary, well, I suppose your journey to Irish dancing. How did you get involved in Irish dancing in the first place? Was it natural that you were going to be sent to Irish dancing because you were a girl, or did you have a story?
It was natural, Mary, because my mother danced and she always loved dancing. So I suppose her two daughters were always going to be brought. I'm the youngest in the family of three, and my older sister was going, so I was brought along, as I think most dancers were. At 4, I was brought along to the local school with my sister, and I think the love affair just started that day, Mary. It's never at all dropped. It's the same today as it was then. My mother always says that the best day was the day my sister decided to give up and stay with her violin, because she said, I suppose it was for me, it wasn't for her. And it was hard with the two of us dancing at the start.
Must have been very hard.
Yeah. But she had her music and she was violin, and I took off on the dancing path. And as I say, I really never looked back. I have had great times and got great opportunities out of it, Mary.
Yeah, I mean, it must be very hard for anybody with more than one child. I mean, I remember what's his name from? He's going to and he was with Jimmy. There was 4 of them in the one house going to Irish dancing, and they used to come to me to the fesh. And I think, God Almighty, how could you have 4 children, 2 little girls and 2 little boys?
Yes.
All costumes, shoes, travel, fashion.
I think at that stage, Mary, with her, it was more that my sister would have been kind of a nervous competitor. So I think it was more about the fact that, if you have 2 of them coming home and maybe one did extremely well or got loads of praise and one didn't, that's not a nice place to be for a mother. So rather than the expense, I think she'd have done anything to do it for both of us. But it was more to do with, music was her talent.
Her talent. Yeah. And dancing with you. That's what we were talking about there one day. I mean, it's not for everybody, no matter how much some children will really try and work, and they work and work and work, and they get so upset if they're not champions, or parents can get upset if they're not champions. But medicine or law or education or whatever could be, or piano could be their thing.
Absolutely. And I kind of say the same, Mary. I go back to the days of dancing. I mean, I have danced and competed since forever, as I'd say. And it's amazing when I look now at who from my competition is still in the dancing world. Not everybody lasts it through. There's a few that were, I look at Ger Stack and the Caseys and the Kylies and all of those who danced and are still involved. But there's a lot of great names who I had great memories and times with, who I still be in contact with.
Yeah.
Plus they're not dancing anymore. So it isn't for everybody. And I suppose the whole journey, as you started it with, isn't for everybody. It's just a passing phase.
No, and sometimes when you look at your class and you look at the children that might last in it, they're not always the ones that are highly competitive, or they're not always the ones that have been winning throughout the years. They're the children who are absolutely passionate about dancing, irrespective of the results. Sometimes you can have really, really exceptional children and they just give up.
Yeah.
And then you're heartbroken.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's just about the competition for them than anything else. So they want to compete in whatever it is. It's not actually the love of dancing. But I do think you get both extremes. You'll get the winner who has a love for it, but you'll also get that child, as you say, Mary, who just loved dancing the whole way up. But maybe they didn't necessarily shine. But you know what? Sometimes they shine as teachers, or they shine later on. So I think if you have the love for it, it sticks with you.
And we all know that you don't have, I suppose you don't have to, you could be an exceptional dancer, not necessarily an exceptional teacher, or vice versa.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, that's so true, Mary.
Do you know, sometimes the not so exceptional dancers are the ones that have the time and the patience, and they can see all the things that need to be done, and they work with the students to get that done. So, you know, there's a place for everybody. I think that's important for us to emphasize, that there's a place for every child. And
once they love to dance, that's the main thing.
That's it. That's what we're all trying to do, I suppose, is to push the love of dancing with dancers. But you grew up in Cork.
Yes. Yeah.
So there, you know, there's you know, it's a big county. It's much bigger than Limerick. But you have such exceptional teachers as well in Cork. So it's a very competitive county.
It is
dancing.
And I suppose there's a lot of history behind it, and you go back through the great teachers down through the years, whether you go from the John Culnans and the Mrs. Mulcahy and all the different people. But I think really
Brenda Springer.
What the pandemic, Brenda Springer, without a doubt, the pandemic has shown us, Mary, is when it comes to it this year, has been an eye-opener for me. The amount of support teachers have given each other. Actually, the competitiveness wasn't even there. It was all about coming together. Look, I'm sure it'll all come back, and we'll all be back
killing each other again.
At the same time, we've all supported each other in different ways. We've all passed ideas to each other. So I think dancing came to the forefront this year in an unusual way.
Yeah, I mean, you were pretty involved, I suppose, in the whole situation as well during the recently, trying to get the classes back, and I've been involved, I suppose, in trying to get people talking, so that colleagues can actually see a different side of the teachers and adjudicators. Because when you look at the Vibe message board, you'd think that Irish dancing teachers and that had just landed from another planet onto Earth, and that there was no humanity in us at all. And I think that what I've been trying to do, I suppose, with the shows is to show who Mary McCarthy really is, and the Mary McCarthy behind the exceptional teacher. And, and things like that, because we tend to look at our colleagues and say, oh, he's trained, in the case of Danny Doherty, he's trained multiple world champions, or she's trained multiple world, but you don't see the person, how they got their journey to it. And I suppose that's what these shows have been about, is to try and give us something to watch, other than, because we can't get to a feis. But you, on the other hand, Mary, you've been involved as well in trying to get us back into, what do you think, Mary, of the whole situation?
I suppose how that happened, Mary, was kind of true to fault, but more than all the teachers got an email to say if you were interested in helping out and becoming part of a support group under the commission guidelines, obviously. And I replied to it because things were quieting down. We were in the pandemic start at that stage. And I said, you know what, I have a couple of weeks. I haven't ever signed up to a committee before. And now it's maybe time to give back. So I did sign up to it. I didn't know I'd be still here going into 2021 helping out, but it's been absolutely fantastic to see the good in people. The people who came together to, it was led under Barbara Blakey from Canada, PRO for CLRG. you know, there was 100 and I don't know, was there 120 or 30 of us first day? It's much smaller now because people are at different stages and back to classes and things like that. But it's been absolutely fantastic to work with, you know, people who I'd never dealt with before, maybe Mary, Clara Hearn in Cork. I'm going to say she's a Cork woman. She's going to hate me for that. She's not, obviously, but she's in Cork now.
Yeah.
You know, and then Jared Carson and David Smith, who you had on the show.
Yeah, David's great.
And then we went down with Mary Sweeney in Germany and Sue in South Africa, Shelley. Like there was some I couldn't name. I shouldn't name now because I'm going to leave out people here.
Yeah, but
there has been great work done with lovely people who all came together for the better of Irish dancing. So yes, Irish dancing is taking a hit in the classrooms, and yes, the numbers are down. Of course they are, but please God, we'll come through this pandemic. And you know what? Children want to dance. There might be a pause on it, or we might just take a step back, but hopefully we'll boom forward a lot better.
But I was looking at
good people, Mary, as you say, you're bringing people on to show the story about them. There's a lot of lovely stories out there, which I learned this year, and it's great that you're doing that. You're promoting the nice.
No, but there are a lot of lovely stories. I mean, you just hear about, you see people like Paula Woodgate, and you don't know the story behind Paula Woodgate, how she got involved, or Patsy McLaughlin. An absolute delight of a woman Patsy is, and she looks at all the shows, you know, and she really, and Danny watches them all, you know, Danny Doherty, and he sent me a message to say that he watches them all, you know, and that's nice that people have something to do, because they're clearly, everyone is bored stiff, everyone is isolated and feeling that, but if they can actually go in and just have a laugh and watch somebody's interview, like, you know, there's some really, really funny ones, you know, that Gary Healy's was really, really funny, and Deirdre Penk O'Donnell and Paddy's, I really thought I was going to get a stroke from Paddy O'Donnell. You know, if you really want to have a laugh and you just and you have an hour to spare, go on and look at Paddy O'Donnell and Deirdre Penk, or look at Gary Healy.
People are used to meeting each other at, you know, 3 times a year or maybe every week, depending what region you're in. And
but we don't see that side of people.
No.
Unless you're very friendly with them, or you know, and you see them regularly, then of course you would see that side of them.
And just like on that, I think like with my mother and father now, they had been isolating, obviously. And like Brenda Springer picked up the phone and rang her and sent her stuff for medication. And like, it was just lovely. It was lovely to call into my mother the following day and hear that Brenda had rang her. And
Brenda's a dote. She's lovely.
Like, that's just lovely, you know, it's really, really nice.
I mean, Brenda rang me and she said, you know, her daughter was very, very friendly with the Irish ambassador to the US. And she said, would you like to interview him? I nearly had a seizure. I said, on one hand, of course I do. But then I thought, I'm really going to be stuck. And she said, he loves Yeats' poetry and he loves Joyce. I said, I hate Joyce, but I love Yeats' poetry. So at least we had something to talk about. So Sharon, her daughter, arranged it, but only for Brenda. And, you know, and then John was on five series. I forget who was it. Brian Hoban said to me, Mary, it'll turn into a Netflix series.
Yes. Well said, Brian, well said.
With John. It did. It went into 5 episodes, but and it could have gone more. But he's a wealth of information, do you know?
Exactly.
But Mary, what did you think of the whole situation of us not being able to teach dancing as normal? What's really irritating me personally is this phrase, elite sport. And okay, you have the GAA, which on one hand is saying it's an amateur sport, and on another, for convenience sake, turns out to be elite. And yet you have Irish dancers who are training to potentially, for it to be their career. They're going into the shows. They're eventually going to teach and judge. So it is a career path.
Yes.
So it is as much an elite sport, and it's a very solitary sport. If you call it a sport, I call it an art form.
Yes.
But it's solitary in that to me it's one of the most social distanced art forms you can get, and yet we seem to be treated differently to elite sport people.
Yeah.
Yet we're categorized in some respects as sport.
Yeah.
What do you think of this?
How do I think about it? I suppose number one, we have two sides. So the likes of the Cayley side and the teams and all of that can give across an impression that we're not solo. But I think really, Mary, and this is only my personal opinion, the elite status came to light because of this. Would we have queried this last year or the year before? Of course we wouldn't. We had no reason to query it. No. But it is something that now needs to be worked on for future going forward. I suppose every generation are going to be hit with something, and we notice that elite status is not there for us. I don't think it's intentional on anyone's behalf, but I do think it's something that has cropped up and needs to be sorted. It isn't a fast fix. We need to look into, if we become elite, are we losing something else? Like you say, I believe we're an art form too, and I think we should be holding an art form side.
I do.
But obviously I know our athletes are elite athletes. So it's a tricky one. I would like to do a good bit of research into trying to work out which is the best way to go long term, because we don't know what's ahead of us going forward. And if we go down an elite status route, are we losing something else? So
I see us as cultural art. I see us as cultural art in that we're promoting the Irish culture. We're bringing tourism into the country because of everyone's knowledge now of River Dance and Lord of the Dance and all of the shows and Irish dancing in general. Mm-hmm. So I see us as being cultural and art and connected to the arts. But I just think the arts has been just painfully badly treated throughout all of this.
And Mary, I spoke to somebody about this the other day. I said probably some of our best achievements in this country have come from the arts.
That's it.
Money is put into, and I'm not out to pick on any sports, but our Irish soccer teams and our Olympic athletes, who I love watching the Olympics and all the athletics.
Absolutely.
They get a lot of money pumped into it, and we're natural born poets, musicians, dancers, but the arts isn't being looked after enough in this country, and we're not being appreciated enough. And I think it's time that they stand back and see what Riverdance did for us. You know, it put us on the map around the world. It's, as you say, Mary, it's bringing tourism in. You know, we spend a lot of time in Kerry, and the amount of tourists come and they want to see music and they want to see dancing. And like, it really does need to come to the forefront more, and it's not being looked after enough.
No, it's not. And I mean, even if they were to say, well, you can go back into your dancing classes, but you can only teach solo dancing. Mm-hmm. You can't teach any dance form that has a contact. Dancers could bring in, our teachers could bring in children and could teach them, could do a choreography where there was no contact, where it was social distanced. If they wanted to do a team dance that was social distanced. There's so many ways there that creative people like us can work. We're not pigeonholed to just having one child in one spot but we should be allowed to get the children back, because the effect on their mental health is going to far exceed any effect of COVID, Mary, I think.
I agree. I think we were very lucky on the last, when we kind of got it sorted there, I think towards the end of November, Mary, and we could go back in what they were calling the pods of 1 up to a maximum of 15. I was quite happy with that. We were back in the hall. It's not ideal. You know, you can't catch your beginner by the hand and teach them their 1, 2, 3s. You can't have your teams coming together, holding hands, but we were back in the class and we could work it, and it was working well. Unfortunately, I suppose with the numbers, we know we have to stop. And I don't think dancing is going to fight against that. We know while we're in level 5, we shouldn't be back in the class. But hopefully we will go back, even in that situation, because the dancers just want to be together. It's not the same training on Zoom. It's not the same, they want to be together. They want to work hard, but there's a social aspect to it too. So I agree with you. Their mental health, Mary, is...
Mental health is everything. I mean, they're kept away from their schools, they're kept away from their friends, and they're also kept away. In many cases, you'll hear children say all the time, Irish dancing is my lifeline. It certainly was mine as an only child, and my mother was an only child. So there really, our house was really tiny. My dad was in England till I was 14. So it was really tiny. So dancing was the place I can only imagine what it would have been like had I been told I couldn't go to dancing class because of COVID.
Yeah. And I think dancing teachers have stepped up to the mark. I think very quickly, a lot of teachers who they're not necessarily very good at technology all the time. They stepped up straight away and they got the classes. So it was very good to get the kids back on Zoom and dancing. So they were dancing at least, and there was a connection, and it kept them connected. I just suppose it's gone on a bit long now.
Yeah, it's gone. We were saying this last night. It's just gone. It's now at the stage where people are either going to say enough of this, I'm going back, because it's all right for the government. They're getting paid. They're still getting paid their travel expenses, even though they're meeting via Zoom. Whereas you or people like people who are depending on getting out and doing their jobs for a living to pay their mortgage or whatever, they're not getting paid. And if you're self-employed, you're not entitled, as far as I know, to the PUP.
I know you can get the COVID payment. You
can you get the COVID payment? Yeah. But the thing about it, I'd say you're a great woman. I'd say you're a great woman for the Zoom. How are you feeling it? Is it going really well for you? Because Terry and Philip was saying that he finds it great because he loves technique and he loves drilling, and he finds it great. Philip made a face that I can't even describe when I used it, because he likes to get movement and make up steps.
Yes, I think there's a bit of both. I have to agree. There's parts of it that I think, oh my God, that's fantastic for the drilling side of it. And then there's parts of it, like, I just absolutely love being in the class with the children. I really like the connection myself. And I think I'm missing that more than anything else. If my husband was ever collecting my daughters from the class when they were younger, he'd come in and say, oh my God, how do you put up with that? But like, it's everyone to their own. Do you know what I mean? Zoom is great, Mary, to answer your question. It's great. It got us through this year. It didn't just get through the dancers, it got me through this year. But I want to be back in the hall. I want to be back in the class. And we have, as you probably know, Mary, we've got a group, Rhythmic Feet Group, who do all the festivals and the touring and the shows. So we've lost it. We were due to go to Italy this year. That was cancelled. We were due to her show at the Opera House in Cork. That was cancelled. They're a group who aren't committed, we'd say, to working 5-6 times a week, but they come twice a week, every week. Now, they can't come together at the moment, unfortunately, because that's all teamwork and it's all hand holding and things like that. So I've missed that. I've lost out on meeting those dancers. We've done a bit on Zoom, but it's not the same. So I want to be back in the class. That's well, it.
I think for me personally, it's I found it a godsend, Mary, in from the point of view of, we were about to start here with the station. We were just about to get the equipment and it was coming from Dublin and everything was locked down. And I just found Zoom and I thought, this might actually work to introduce our station. Had Zoom not been here, nobody would have heard of our new station. No, we wouldn't have had a chance to put out shows to show what we could do. We'll be using a vMix system, which is slightly, it's different. You can play music at the same time and you can bring in videos and it's a bit like Sky or Fox News. It's that kind of way, but it's not too unlike Zoom. So Zoom has been good in that respect for allowing us to, and also I suppose it's helped me to connect with people and to stay connected with the Irish dancing community, because
Which is
we lost.
Mary. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's worth anything, to keep connected with each other.
To keep, yeah, because like we can't connect with a feis, we can't go to a feis, and I'm not teaching with anybody anyway. So when you go to a feis, you're more or less on your own, and so you're looking at people all around, and you're imagining you're way beyond, talking to you, and saying, oh, they'd never, they're far too, how will I say, professional, a judge or a teacher, I should say. They've had 10 world champions or 20 world champions, and I've had none, so, but when you actually sit down and talk to them, everyone is just so lovely, and they all have such individual stories to tell about their journeys too.
And that's what you brought to it. That's what you've brought to it. Now you're seeing the person behind the teacher and behind the adjudicator, and that's lovely to hear. It's lovely to see.
Where do you see it going now from now, Mary, with COVID? Do you think it's going to, we're in stage 5 now.
I suppose.
How long more do you think, can you see this going on for?
I don't know. I'm probably coming at it from a dancing point now, on the basis that a lot of work has been done over the last couple of months from Michael Dillon and Barb and Cormac and David Smith as well, on getting the online feis going. So we're due to have our first online feis in Munster now. I suppose it's going to be there for a while, Mary. To me, there's definitely another 6 months in it. I would like to think I could be more optimistic in that, but
I'm inclined to agree with you, Mary. I think nothing is going to happen before May.
Yeah, I agree with you there. If it is, it'll be very small and very slow. So I think maybe we just have to embrace this for a while and get us through the next phase of it. And hopefully then, Mary, for the summer, we'll just erase last year and start again.
I think for all us feis organisers and that, it's another year that you won't be able to run the feis, because by the time June comes, in July, it's kind of like you nearly need the whole year to plan your feis. Because I do anyway. I usually plan from one feis to another, so everything is put away and people are organised sessions, and although Mairead Hackett is so brilliant, she could, and Conor Holmes, they could have things at the flick of a switch for you, but you have
to be the first to take on the online feis now, Mary, in Munster, out of the region. You'll have to be the first to take that on. You're so good with it.
No. What do you think? Is it going to work? How is it going to work? I mean, I'm just wondering from the point of view of the music. How is everyone going? Are we going to have to make allowances for the fact that the music may be off sync with the dancer?
Well, it's not, Mary, you see, because we've been part, I suppose, because I was involved a small bit in the committee, we've done the 2 trials. So we've been part of the 2 trials that have been done. It's perfect because it's video, so it's not live on Zoom. So you upload your video to the system, and then the judge sits down. So I pick my Sunday the same as I would if I was judging any feis, and I sit down on the Sunday, but I'm just watching them on a video. What's kind of nice about it is you're seeing every dancer one by one. So
I love that.
The dancer is being judged one by one, and what I suppose we don't have here, and they do have in America, is every judge gave your comments, which I think was a lovely thing for our dancers.
I always liked that.
Yeah, and so it's different, and we're again missing the social thing, but we know we have to do that at the moment. But it is like, it does work. It does work because it actually was a lot more simple than I thought. It really was.
Oh yeah, no, it's a simple process. I was just wondering if it was going to be on Zoom type of thing. Sometimes you see dancers on Zoom and the music is not in sync.
Correct.
And, but if they're sending in tapes, then it's up to them to ensure that the music is in sync with them.
Yes. So you get kind of a few days to register with the company, and you register, and then you dance, you practice your steps, and you do your video, and you upload your video, and then the judging is picked for 2 or 3 days, depending on how many numbers. And then they get their results after that with all their comments and everything. So, but it's perfectly, like, once they tape it in time, of course, it's perfectly in time. And
Yes.
as I say, they're all watched one by one, which is nice, because I know some dancers always get a bit put out if they think the judge doesn't look at them, don't they?
Yeah.
So it's,
well, they can't be. You can't be accused of not looking at when it's
yes,
one by one,
exactly.
unless they think that you've gone out next door to have a cup of tea while they're dancing.
We wouldn't do that at all, Mary.
No, but I think the writing the comments is an exceptional idea. And I always do. I agree with it, because children don't always know why you have knocked them a mark, or how you have found the placings that you find, and in some cases, Mary, we were only talking about it the other day, in some cases you could have 4 or 5 children who are all exceptional, and they're great, timing, they're great, but one child for you might stand out as having being stylish and oozing in style. Another adjudicator might like another child because they're technically brilliant, and somebody else might go for rhythm. It might be all about rhythm, so you can go, when you have everybody all in the one standard and they're all perfect, you've got to go with somebody. And
Yes.
sometimes I say, a child can come out and they can just ooze style.
Yes.
And for me, they stand out. They mightn't stand out for somebody else, and you're baffled afterwards when you think, but I thought she was fabulous,
Yeah.
or he was fabulous. But when you're able to write down your comments, that helps them to see what you saw in them and what you thought they needed to improve on.
And I always like that with the exams, Mary, if I'm doing an exam, I'm able to tell, like you say, I'm able to tell that dancer what I thought. And even though their teacher's going to tell them day in and day out, sometimes they believe it more. So I thought it was lovely to get that from the judges, to say, you know what, I keep telling you, or this is what they saw. It's just to me, it was better than any prize. It was better than any award. Now, they all still love a sash from Red Hackett or whatever, but what I'm saying is it was lovely to get the comments.
Oh, it is, because, I mean, as you said, you quite rightly said, you could be telling them, Mary McCarthy could be in class every day saying, pull in your arms, throw your shoulders back, cross your feet, get up on your toes. But the adjudicator might just write down, you need to get up on your toes more, and you need to pull your shoulders back. And then you often find they'll always say to you, my teacher always says that. Yeah. But they're so busy trying to correct all the things that the teacher says.
Yeah. And sometimes they're so used to hearing us that they can kind of let it go over their head a bit.
Yeah. It's only human nature. They just kind of, and then they become so familiar with you as well. You become almost like a friend at times, or a family member. And it's like when your parent is trying to teach you. I'm sure how have you adjusted to homeschooling, or have you done any?
I'm lucky enough, Mary, age-wise, my son is in his final year in college, so he's well able to look after himself. And my 2 daughters, I've got one girl in 5th year and one girl doing her junior cert, so they don't actually need.
You don't look like you have children that.
Oh God, I feel it, Mary.
What's he studying, Mary?
He's doing economics through transformational learning in UCC.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
No idea what it is. I zoned out when you said economics, anything to do with money or maths.
Well, his father being a similar line of business, it wouldn't be my style of business, but his father's similar, so.
Sure, he can run your business.
So I'm very lucky, Mary, but I do feel sorry for the kids, because where I'll come back at that from is, I suppose I had my 2 girls dancing with me, and it's great now, it's wonderful, but when they're younger, like, it's much harder to teach your own. It causes more, you want to be the teacher in the class and you want to come home and be the mom. So I really do have sympathy for parents. Actually, one of my girls told me earlier, one of the schools asked them to wear their uniform when they're online. And I said, you know what?
Excellent idea.
Yeah, but at the same time, Mary, I'm thinking that coming at it from a mother, they probably argue with them to get online, to do their homework. And then if they have to add the uniform into it as well, I said, I think we just have to maybe let that one ride for the moment. And, you know,
I think it's a good idea from the point of view of when they get into their uniform, they have that sense of normality that they don't have if they can come down and they can do their Zoom class and they're in their pajamas in the bottom and they have a top on. They've lost that sense of normality and that sense of being part of society and still being part of everything that's going on. So I think from that point of view, the idea of actually coming down, getting up at the same time as you would go into school, coming on in your uniform, and at least you feel, but I do understand it from your point of view as well.
And again, like that, I suppose there's different views to all, because are their cameras on or aren't they on? You know, there's some people in situations that they don't want their camera to be on, and that's fair enough as well. So I think at the moment, all teachers and dancing teachers alike have to be understanding. You know, I think we just have to, once we're keeping them going, I think we have to work with them as against them, you know.
Mary, I was talking to Kathleen and James McLaughlin. They were fabulous. They were absolutely wonderful. And you know, I never spoke to them before. I spoke to Kathleen because I judged in America with her, but I never spoke apart from saluting James. And lovely man. Both of them are teachers outside of Irish dancing, or were teachers outside of Irish dancing. And I was saying to them, you know, we come into Irish dancing and we become teachers, and we go from being dancers to teachers, and you're thrown in at the deep end, because if you're teaching on your own, you end up teaching children, and you become their teacher, their friend, their counselor sometimes, and there's so many dynamics going on in your classroom that when you're a primary teacher or when you're a secondary teacher, you do all these pedagogical courses, and you do child psychology courses and that. And I was saying, you know, what do they think of the idea of every 2 years maybe having a conference where teachers could go to and certainly could attend before they do their teachers, where they could learn to recognize the child that's having difficulty in the class for whatever reason, or recognize all the little things, the little dynamics, or the parent who's been expecting too much maybe from the child, or the child who's expecting too much of themselves. What do you think of that if we were able to get it into?
I think that's brilliant, Mary, because like, as I suppose, I'm going to loosely say I teach on my own because my mother has been with me from day one, and a lot of my older girls are with me, but I do teach on my own. And you're constantly, you know, if it's not child protection courses, it's, you know, fitness courses for them, it's all the different things that you need, as you say. And I think if they were organized, even as you say, once weekend, the end of the Worlds, the start of the Worlds every year, if there was a day course on something, again, to keep on top of us. I think like the work group, I think it was maybe Becky Chapman there and Erin, they set up there for the Sundays for 8 or 9 weeks. They did little training courses, which were brilliant for us to help us with all the technologies. There was a different thing every Sunday.
Yeah.
I think we can help each other on that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there with the training for things, and even small little things that will help, anything that will help each other. I think, you know, we definitely need that help in the training, because you're all sorts. You're a physio, you're a psychologist, you're everything. And sometimes a child will come to you quicker than they will come to a friend or a parent, because they know that you're somewhat distanced, and they might be being bullied in school. They might just be putting too much pressure. They might have an eating disorder. You don't know. There could be so many things going on, or they might be just feeling that they're not getting anywhere with their dancing, but they love it. Yeah. And you have to tread that very, very, very slender path between teacher, friend, confidant, parent, if you like. And to know that there was a course that you could do, that you were with your colleagues doing it maybe once
as you say, before World Championships or after, well, before would probably be better. Certainly once a year or twice or once every 2 years that you could attend this seminar, a weekend seminar, where you could learn the pedagogical approaches to dealing with the children in your class. Maybe young teachers starting out wouldn't be so daunted. I can remember my very first teacher was Breda Gorey in Limerick, and Breda gave up after a week or 2 weeks, and she suggested to my mother to send me to O'Rourke's because she said, I can't teach. Now, Breda was an extraordinary dancer.
Yes.
She literally panicked in front of the class, and she just had no. She was a very good teacher, but just she said, "I just don't want to teach," and that's how I went on. But I started off for a few weeks with Breda, and I just think of all the teachers like that who just end up in a class with 20 children, and they're panic stricken.
Yeah.
Because you're taught, you study for the exam, but you haven't a clue after that.
And teaching isn't for everybody, the same as like primary school teaching isn't for everybody. And people go into it, I think, maybe for the wrong reasons. And they go for the holidays and the short days and all this, but it's not for everybody. I mean, I would definitely say I'm at my happiest in a hall full of children. And I started with Breda too, because I started with Breda Mulcahy, but she wasn't the same kind of a Breda. We had a bit of crack there.
Breda was very different. Breda Gorey ended up going, her husband owned the Limerick Leader newspaper at the time, and they ended up moving to Guernsey, either Guernsey or Jersey in the Channel Islands. So she moved there, but she was a beautiful dancer, and she danced in Bunratty before I did, and but just didn't want, just said, no, this isn't for me. And I just think that there should be something there for young teacher, any teacher who's starting off in their own class, who thinks, I'm going to be a teacher, and suddenly they walk in and there's 24-year-olds in front of them, and they think, and one is crying and the other won't leave their mother, and what am I supposed to do, you know?
And some kids, Mary, you have to talk very, very quietly to them, and some could do with a good old roar every now and again. So it's just the different, getting to know the different personalities. I suppose a couple of years down the road you get that, but starting off, I agree, it's very, very hard.
I'm trying to think who told me the other day that they have a child in their class for a long time, and the child has never spoken to them.
Wow.
Ever. And that's fine. I'm trying to think who it was, but they said, yeah, in all the years the child has been in the class, she's never spoken at all, and she's as happy as Larry.
I have the other extreme. They don't stop talking to me. We laugh here because my phone could buzz at home at 12 o'clock at night, and it could be the older group in a nightclub sending me a message to tell me how they're getting on, or showing me pictures of who they met or whatever. So
isn't that lovely?
It's lovely. We have a great relationship, and I really, really love the fact that they do that. They could be out and they meet each other, and then they take a picture and they send it to me, and guess who we are or whatever. So it's lovely. It keeps me going.
And you have twin girls?
No.
They look like.
No, everybody says it, that they look alike at the moment. Ellie is 17 and Molly is 15.
They look alike.
Yeah, and it's only recently, Mary, because they didn't when they were younger, but everybody says it now that they do.
And they danced on, is it still a jig gig, or is it, have they changed?
Unreal Deal.
Now.
Yeah. They just love all of that sort of stuff. I suppose, Mary, when I was very conscious to maybe not introduce them at the start when they were younger, I didn't want them to do what I did. I wanted them to find their own things. They found it, and it's dancing, I think. They do music as well, but they do absolutely love it now, and I'm delighted that they do love it. But it definitely wasn't pushed on them young.
And your son never did it.
he had to do it in school through default, so I know he can do his 1, 2, 3s, and he has a lovely pair of feet. But no,
oh, isn't it awful when they have and you're looking and you're thinking.
But he's sport, and he's loves his sport, so he found his thing too. We were a divided family. My husband and son went off one way to the matches, and we went the other way with dancing. So,
did he ever feel left out? No.
No, not at all. They were all happy out, the two of them going off one way, so he never felt that way. He was well looked after, Mary. He's the only son.
And he's probably developed a really great relationship with your husband because of that as well, you know.
Oh yeah, they get on, and they look alike as well, kind of. So they do get.
Yeah. But Mary, another question I was asking, and it came out of Niall O'Leary's questioning about the I suppose the double question of, one, the association, but two, the split, allowing teachers and adjudicators to judge, say, COGAL and commission, and to have dancers, that open platform type thing, where you could almost, I suppose, in some respects they have it in Europe, but you know, here, no, that you'd have commission dancers being able to dance a COGAL feshes and vice versa. And I suppose now, since we've seen how people are collaborating a lot now on Zoom and that, and you're seeing people doing this hornpipe step and that hornpipe step, or this traditional set and that traditional set, once we go back to normality again, there'll be it'll all be back to, you can't even photograph a feis or a video a child on stage anymore. So that collaboration is gone. Yes. You know, is there room for that in the new Irish dancing?
Well, I think I'll probably let that up to the head bosses in Dublin to decide that, Mary. But I would. I suppose we're joined an organisation, and we support an organisation for a reason. And if you join when you follow the law, you know, you question it and you do all of that, but you have to go with it.
Absolutely.
I would love to think that it could be all one. I don't know, do I want to see commission dancers dancing under COGAL or COGAL dancing under commission? I would love to see it coming together. Is there room for it? There's a lot of history there, I think, Mary, and it might take a bit longer. It's sad to see it, but at the same time, it is what it is. And, you know,
John Culnan was telling me now that the reason he said in the beginning, it split because it split, and he said Cork became fractured because most of the good teachers went to COGAL, and John and his sister went with commission. At the time, he said they were paying commission and they were paying COGAL. So they were members of COGAL and they were members of commission. So were the O'Rourke's. He said, Mary, it's hard to believe, but he said the O'Rourke's and the Nolans, they were all, he said, COGAL. And now we're all such staunch commission. And I said, well, I was never anything other than commission, and I never would be anything other than commission. But he said that Limerick stayed loyal to commission. Everyone in Limerick stayed with commission and stopped paying COGAL. But everyone in Cork was the reverse, except for John and a few more. And so he said, do you know, he said, we were all one at one stage. We could be both. And that's what Gary Healy was saying. If, as a lawyer, he can be part of all these this law association and that law association and this one and this one and this one, and pay his money to all of them, and he's part of them. But he was giving out. He was saying that we can only judge, and it prevents you from earning a living, because you can't judge a commission a COGAL feis, or you can't say to your look at a dancer and say, well, she'd never win in commission, but she might win in COGAL, so I'll put her into a COGAL feis, and thereby the child is benefiting in some way, because they're competing against children that they have a better chance maybe of winning against or doing well against. So it's all very...
There's so many organisations now, Mary, even going beyond the commission and the COGAL and the WIDA and the CRDM. There's so many more branching out. I would like to think it was going the other way and it was coming back together. But I suppose when you've lots of different opinions, that's the one thing I think I've seen as well this year. You're dealing so in the school on my own, I kind of make the calls, so I don't have to go. I look for advice and I'll take it, but I have to make the call. Whereas when you're working on whatever it was, online feshes or whatever it was, you have to appreciate it that there's a lot of opinions there, and that's probably where that comes into it. Are people willing to, side with other people, even though they may have a belief differently?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is it close? I personally don't think it's close.
I just think we're too big. Yes. I just think we're way too big. I mean, I have interviewed now, I've interviewed, Terry and Philip were they were COGOL and they were CRN and they were commission. And I've interviewed a lovely guy from CRN and somebody from COGOL. They contacted me, would I interview them as well? So I interviewed them. I knew nothing about either. Well, certainly didn't know anything about CRN, but I was saying to them, the whole thing is gone. Commission is so big now. Could you imagine if we had a combined world championship? Jesus, I mean, it's long enough as it is without adding more children.
I kind of have a belief on that one as well, Mary. It might be a popular belief, but
go on.
I think it is gone too big, and I've definitely seen the hours that people put in. I mean, there was 40-50 hour week being done voluntarily this year by people in that group. And obviously Commission itself, who were leading the whole thing, are doing that in the background that we don't see and maybe don't appreciate at times. But I do believe it's gone so big. Why are we having a World Championships every year? Now, that probably won't be liked. But I mean, if you're going to a World Cup in soccer or if you're going to an Olympics, it's going every 4 years. We have an All-Ireland, which at this stage, Mary, is very similar to a Worlds because, there is no division down on it being Ireland or even close by. So I don't see why we couldn't come to having an All-Ireland one year and a Worlds the following year and have either of them every second year. I think you're bringing people, I think it's probably a bit too much for how big it is.
I think Mary, you're actually right. John again was talking about how he set up the Worlds. He was one of the people who set up the Worlds, and it was really mostly all Dublin and himself in Cork, and he used to have to travel up from Cork. And he was saying, and I always remember it, the All-Ireland was the competition. It was the ultimate competition that you would compete at. And a lot of people feel that the All-Ireland is still the main competition. There is room for the All-Ireland to be on every 4 years or every year, and every fourth year to have a World Championships. Like the Olympics,
or even to rotate them, Mary, because the All-Ireland is one of the biggest competitions. And if that was 1 year and the Worlds was the next year, just to gradually get there, doing every second year, because number one, they're changing steps, and I say that in one hand, and then I say, I remember we had to have a real slip jig hornpipe, 2 sets ready to go when they called it out at the side of the stage what you were dancing. So I'll get over the rounds. But I do think that it's a bit much. I think it's a little bit much.
I was just thinking of John. He said to me when the Commission and COGOL originally were together, he said you had to go up on the stage. All of the meetings were Oscailga in Irish. So, and everyone that was on that was in the Commission were all Conor na Gaeilge. So they were all fluent Irish. And the only teachers that were invited to the meetings were also Conra members. And that's what caused the angst, because teachers felt that they weren't able to be on the Commission. So it caused the split. But he said, before you'd go up on stage to dance, you'd be just about to go up on stage and you'd have to stand and answer questions in Irish. Mary, could you just imagine it?
Well, you know what? I did grades recently there, Mary, for O'Rourke's.
Imagine it.
O'Rourke School, and you know the way they have introduced the Irish to the grade 1 to 4, and the poor children were petrified. I mean, beautiful dancers, but they were looking at me saying, "Oh no, she's going to ask me questions in Irish." I think they were more worried about the Irish than they were about the dancing.
I did my TCRG exam, and Orla translated 4 pages of my life into Irish for me. And everywhere I went, I learned it all off word for word. And I have a very good memory now for remembering things. And I still remember the 4 pages. And I read it and 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 read it. And I went in and he asked me, Dies Miragut, Cadisanum Dum, what is your name?
Yeah.
And off I went.
With your 4 pages.
No, I got as far as the end of page 1 and I took a breath. I said, I don't want it to look now as if I'm reading it. And I remember the poor man looked at his watch, and I remember he opened his mouth to ask a question. And off I went with the remainder, and I did not stop until I got the whole lot of it finished.
You did Orla proud.
And he asked me, he looked and he said, "Well, Gorma good." He never got another question out of me.
Oh, that was brilliant.
And he still only gave me, only got 50 out of 50. I barely passed, but I passed enough. You know, he knew that I was after learning it all off, but I passed.
But you were after putting the effort in, Mary. That was amazing.
You have no idea, Mary. You have no idea the stress. Could you imagine a world champion, God love them, going up on stage, tense, any child, and having to answer questions in Irish before you go up?
Can you imagine if we brought that in, the trouble that we get?
Can you imagine the VOI board? What do you think of the VOI board, Mary? I personally think it should be shut down.
I agree. I think it's the saddest thing in Irish dancing, and I think anybody who gets involved in it, puts anything into it, it's just sad. I actually think it's sad more than anything else. I think whoever's writing these things has other issues. You wouldn't treat anybody that way. I just think it definitely should be shut down because kids are believing it. This is the sad thing about it. Kids are following it. They think it's the place to go to find information, and it's not. So I just think it's so sad.
To me, it's the worst form of bullying because, if somebody is bullying you physically, you can see them and you can react to them. You can ignore them. You can walk away from them. But when it's somebody on a VOI board, I'm thankful that I've never, nobody has ever said anything on it, good or bad, about me. Now, in the very beginning, when I was FESH registrar, I used to think it was and I put up everyone's FESH up in it. If anyone was running a FESH, I'd put up their FESH details. But when I actually started to realize what was going on in the board, I said, I don't want to be part of this. So I didn't put their, I felt a bit bad because I thought it was a good way of advertising their FESH. But
that's what you thought the board was there for.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was there for. But it's insidious, Mary.
It is absolutely, Mary. It's just an awful shame, really. I don't know if it's an easy thing to get shut down or not. I don't know, but it definitely should be because it's so bad. It's so bad.
I mean, it's just. I mean, psychiatrists wouldn't even be able to figure out what was going on in the minds of people that actually put on some of the things they put on there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't understand what goes on in somebody's mind as they're actually typing out the words, the things that they say, and then press enter and let it off and just happily go about their business.
Yeah, it's just thinking of all the good work that's being done. How anybody could be writing these things is just so wrong.
But what's going to be the next now for Mary McCarthy there in the rebel county?
What's next? I don't know, Mary, but I'm sure it'll be dancing anyway. I always say, the great things. I think when I think dancing, I think of the friends I've made, actually.
Had Barry just walked into the room as I said that, and he went up Cork.
Up Cork, tell him, yeah. Once a rebel, always a rebel. No, I did go for Limerick in the All-Ireland this year, but we were out of it, Mary, so.
You know what he said when I said Limerick won, it's brilliant. He said it's nice to see the underdog and the lesser team get a chance.
Yes, I would support Limerick. I'd have a soft spot for Limerick. I'd have a one for Kerry as well, but I'd have a soft spot for Limerick because, as you know, Mary, myself and Ger Stack and Brian White and all those, we've had Michael Kiley and Mala. We've had, because we've grown up together and we're still great friends and we're still chatting every day together. You know, they're the things that I remember out of dancing. Do I remember how I did in the Munsters every year or the Worlds every year? You know, you can go back and you can give out the facts, but what I remember is the fun times we had, you know, the
but
crack,
that is what people will remember.
Slagging they gave me, Mary.
What?
I got an awful slagging from them at the feshes. They used to, and they'd come in, I'd remember down in the hall at the Nolan's Fesh, I'd say maybe, and they'd come in after rugby and there'd be a smell of deep heat all over the hall. They'd take off the rugby gear and they'd be up the stage dancing afterwards. But like we had just some great times, great dancing, beautiful rhythm, beautiful timing, but there was great fun. And you know, I used to come home from the Fesh on a Sunday, Mary, from Limerick, and I'd write to maybe Ger on the Monday, and Ger would get the letter on a Tuesday, and he'd write back on a Wednesday, and I'd get the letter on Thursday, and then I'd see him at the Fesh again the following Sunday. Like, but it was gas. And Brian the same. We had great times together.
Brian White was great as well.
Yeah.
Wonder he never did his teachers.
I keep saying it to him, but no, I think he's gone to rugby. All right, Mary, I think we've lost him. But
no,
still,
he's lost to rugby. He's definitely lost to rugby.
But he came up for a few years. We do a Strictly Come Dancing every year in our
That's
class.
Right.
He came up to judge it for us, and he danced. And my God, Jesus, he's as good as now as he was then. What a beautiful hornpipe he did.
Yeah.
So I think once you're a dancer, that's always there, you know.
Yeah, and of course we can't finish without talking about David Gainey's his contribution. Isn't it spectacular, Mary? The collaborations.
Just absolutely. I probably will bring David and the Gardner brothers in there, and I don't.
Oh, the Gardner brothers are immense.
I don't want to pinpoint any two, but my God, what role models they've been this year for the dancing world.
Absolutely.
I mean, there wasn't even a pause if you asked them to do something with the treble reel when Claire got in contact with the
Gardners are lovely boys.
It was done. And what a beautiful competition. I remember going through the summer and there were some beautiful sunny days and we'd come back up and you'd be loading treble reel after treble reel. There was still a pleasure. And my husband used to say to me, it's a lovely day going away down the beach. And I'd say, no, I'm watching the treble reels here. Like it was just, they are what dancing is all good about. And I watched Amy Mae Dolan the other night. Again, another beautiful.
Oh, Amy Mae Dolan was just beautiful.
Beautiful, Mary. We have role models out there, and that's who the young people should be following, not the voy boards. Like David Gainey has been incredible, absolutely incredible.
I interviewed David. David was my first interview. No, Michael Dillon was my first, and then David Gainey, and then it just started to catapult from there. You know, it just one after another, you know, and Danny wasn't short up. Danny was hilarious and his, but
you're enjoying it, I'd say. You're enjoying the chats.
I am. I'm enjoying the chats, and I'm enjoying getting to know people, and I'm enjoying, I suppose, revealing the other side of people's lives, you know, that you don't often see.
Yeah.
And hopefully when we go back into competition, parents will have, and teachers will have a healthy respect for a healthier understanding of the nuances of all our lives, that we're not just Irish dancing teachers or Irish dancing judges, that we're mothers, we're aunts, we're sisters, we're brothers, and so on, and uncles and aunts, and that there's so much to our lives beyond Irish dancing. And yet
Absolutely.
we're so similar in a lot of respects. The one thing that connects us all is the love of this insane art form.
Yes, but it is.
And I say insane because it's, you could be gone from it for 6 months and you could walk into a fesh and you're hooked again.
You're hooked, yeah. Look, I think once you're hooked, and there's no going back from it. But would you want to go? I wouldn't want to give it up for anything at all. It would be like cutting my right arm off now if it was taken away from me in whatever form. It's always going to be there.
Yeah. Well, Mary McCarthy, it was fabulous talking to you.
Mary, somebody has to do your interview now next. So we have to sit you on the other side of the camera, and we need to get Mary's story.
Oh God, it's not that interesting. It's pretty boring.
You can get Brian Hoban to do that one for you there now.
I know, but Brian actually called Joe while you were there with cable. We were looking for a cable for a camcorder that I had, and of course I lost the cable, and we're trying to test it out here. So here. Fair play to him. Facebook can be good for some things. Yeah. I put a post up and Brian said, I have one.
Brilliant.
So
he came and did a stage for us for one before we moved into the Opera House with our show. We used to be in Silver Springs Hotel, and he built a stage for us. My God, what work went into it. I never realised what it took to build that stage. It was fantastic altogether.
I pestered him for over a year to actually start making the stages when he gave up the carpentry. He and his brother had a business, and when he gave it up, I said, Brian, why don't you keep doing the stage? I said it to him about 6 or 8 times, and eventually he decided to do it. Yeah. And I keep saying to him, I was the one who got you to do that now.
You're the one that needs to get the commission, Mary, is it?
Get the commission on that every stage. No, he's very good. He's brilliant, and Linda's a pet.
Brilliant. You're spoiled in Limerick with all the good teachers around you.
But sure, it's the same in Cork.
It is. It's good.
I mean, we're lucky and we're unlucky in a sense, because if you're trying to open up a class, there's classes coming out of every crack in the wall, and good classes.
Yes.
The
only thing, Mary, is there's plenty of children as well. I think there's enough for everybody to go around. So
there is.
We have to ignore that side of it and work with your own, and you're fine.
That's it. Well, Mary, thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you very
And
much.
continued success to you and all at the McCarthy School of Irish Dancing in the rebel county of Cork, the real county, the real capital.
Thank you, Mary. It's been a pleasure chatting to
you.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
Bye.
Bye.